Replacement rarely arrives the way people imagine it will. There is no dramatic confrontation, no warning meeting, no explicit declaration that your position is under threat. In almost every environment, organizations, social hierarchies, even personal relationships, replacement begins quietly, long before anything visibly goes wrong. This is the first uncomfortable truth behind you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. People are not removed because they fail. They are removed because they become easy to remove. Most men believe replacement is triggered by mistakes, poor performance, conflict, disloyalty, but those are visible events and systems avoid visibility whenever possible. Systems prefer frictionless transitions. The moment you are flagged as replaceable is the moment your absence no longer creates risk, disruption, or cost. That moment does not announce itself. Instead, it expresses itself through subtle changes. Access narrows, communication thins, expectations quietly shift. You are still present, still performing, still contributing, yet something essential has changed. The system has begun to treat you as provisional. This is where downgrading begins. Downgrading is not punishment, it is reclassification. You move from protected to optional, from core to interchangeable. And crucially, this shift is driven less by outcomes and more by behavioral signals, markers that indicate how much resistance your removal would generate. This documentary exists to expose those markers. Because the most dangerous part of replacement is not the removal itself. It is the period before it when you still believe you are safe. Consider how often people say, everything seemed fine until suddenly it wasn't. That shock is not accidental. It is the result of misunderstanding how power evaluates people. Systems do not wait for collapse. They downgrade early to avoid it. When you are downgraded, you are not attacked. You are simply deprioritized. Investment slows. Advocacy fades. Your name is mentioned less when decisions are made. None of this feels hostile, which is why most people miss it. They interpret silence as neutrality, distance as coincidence, reduced engagement as temporary stress. But silence, in these moments, is not empty. It is informative. This is why you are replaceable is not an insult or a provocation. It is a structural condition. Replaceability is a status assigned when your behavioral profile suggests low consequence. And that profile is built over time, often by actions you believe are harmless or even virtuous. Many men unknowingly accelerate their own downgrading by doing what they think is right. Being available, being agreeable, being consistent, being loyal without leverage. These behaviors feel stabilizing. In reality, they often reduce perceived value by removing uncertainty, scarcity, and risk. And systems pay attention to those variables far more than intentions. In environments governed by efficiency and continuity, the ideal removal is invisible. No disruption, no backlash, no emotional cost. When that condition is met, replacement becomes not just possible, but optimal. The tragedy is that by the time replacement becomes visible, the decision has already been made. This is why the focus of this documentary is not betrayal, termination, or loss. Those are outcomes. The real subject is downgrading, the quiet behavioral audit that happens while you are still showing up, still contributing, still believing you matter. Over the next sections, we will examine the exact behavioral markers systems use to make this judgment. Not hypotheticals, not generic psychology, but specific, repeatable signals that precede replacement across domains. The goal is not paranoia, it is recognition. Because once you understand that replacement never begins with failure, you stop waiting for a mistake to explain what is happening. You start watching behavior, your own included. And that awareness is the first defense against being quietly downgraded. To understand why you are replaceable, you must first understand how systems think. Systems do not judge people the way individuals do. They do not weigh effort, morality, or intention. They do not ask whether you deserve your position. Systems rank. This distinction is critical to the idea of behavioral markers used to downgrade you because ranking operates silently. Judgment is emotional. Ranking is mechanical. Judgment requires confrontation. Ranking requires only observation. Every system, corporate, social, political, relational, exists to preserve continuity. Its primary objective is not fairness, but stability. And stability depends on knowing who can be removed with the least disruption. That is why systems constantly sort people by consequence, not by character. When you assume systems judge, you wait for feedback. When you understand systems rank, you look for signals. Ranking answers one question: what happens if this person disappears tomorrow? Judgment asks, is this person good or bad? Systems care only about the first. This is why downgrading happens quietly. Public judgment creates friction. Private ranking creates options. If a system openly criticizes you, it risks resistance, emotion, and instability. If it silently reduces its dependence on you, it gains flexibility. Replacement becomes a logistical decision, not a moral one. This is the environment in which replaceability is determined. Most people misunderstand this because they were trained in evaluative environments, schools, families, early workplaces, where feedback was explicit. You were told when you were doing well, corrected when you weren't. But as systems scale, feedback becomes inefficient. Ranking replaces explanation, and ranking relies on behavioral data. Every interaction you have feeds that data. How you respond to pressure, how you handle silence, how you react when access changes, whether you escalate emotionally or adapt quietly. These behaviors are not interpreted as personality traits, they are interpreted as risk indicators. This is where the concept of downgrading becomes clearer. Downgrading is not demotion. It is a reduction in perceived necessity. You can maintain the same title, the same responsibilities, even the same output, while being internally reclassified as optional. Once that happens, investment changes. You receive less protection, less tolerance, less explanation. Decisions begin to happen around you instead of through you. This is not punishment, it is optimization. The system is reducing dependency in anticipation of potential removal. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Systems begin this process long before they are certain they want to replace you. They downgrade to keep options open. This is why many people feel blindsided when replacement finally occurs. They mistake continued presence for continued value, but presence is cheap. What matters is cost of loss. Systems are constantly calculating that cost, and they use behavior, not promises or past contributions, to do it. Consider how this plays out in organizations. Two employees may perform at similar levels, but one is insulated from cuts while the other is quietly exposed. The difference is rarely raw skill. It is perceived consequence. Who would cause disruption if removed? Who would trigger resistance? Who would create a gap that cannot be quickly filled? These judgments are not announced. They are inferred. The same logic applies in relationships and social hierarchies. People who are emotionally central are protected. People who are emotionally available but structurally peripheral are not. Replaceability emerges when your removal produces inconvenience, not impact. This is why behavioral markers matter so much. They tell systems how much leverage you have without you saying a word. Do you adapt instantly to changes, or do you withdraw? Do you seek reassurance when uncertainty appears, or do you self-regulate? Do you make yourself indispensable or merely helpful? Each response updates your rank. Importantly, ranking is continuous. You are not evaluated once and locked in. You are constantly rescored based on current behavior. This is why long-term loyalty does not guarantee protection, and why past success does not prevent downgrading. Systems privilege present leverage over historical contribution. This leads to a crucial realization. Replaceability is not personal, it is structural. It is not about whether you are liked. It is about whether your absence would matter enough to complicate the system's functioning. When you understand this, the title "you are replaceable" 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you stop sounding cynical and start sounding diagnostic. It is not an accusation. It is an explanation of how modern systems quietly manage risk. To understand why you are replaceable, the word itself must be stripped of emotion. Replaceable is not an insult. It is not a judgment of worth. Psychologically, replaceable means something far colder and more precise. Your removal carries low consequence. This distinction matters because most people misunderstand why downgrading happens. They assume replaceability means incompetence, failure, or inadequacy. In reality, many highly competent individuals are replaced every day. Competence alone does not protect you. What protects you is consequence. Systems do not ask, "Is this person good?" They ask, "What happens if this person is gone?" If the answer is not much, downgrading begins. This is the psychological core of behavioral markers used to downgrade you. Replaceability is not about output, it is about dependency. You become replaceable the moment a system believes it can continue smoothly without you. This is why people are often confused when they are sidelined despite strong performance. Performance creates value. Dependency creates protection, and the two are not the same. Consider this carefully. Systems will tolerate difficult people if they are costly to remove and quietly eliminate agreeable people if they are easy to replace. This is not cruelty. It is optimization. Replaceability is a logistical assessment, not a moral one. Psychologically, replaceability forms when three perceptions align. First, low disruption. Your absence does not create chaos. Others can absorb your role. Processes continue. The system feels stable without you. Second, low resistance. You are unlikely to push back, escalate, or create friction. You accept changes calmly. You adapt without protest. While this seems mature, it often signals that removal would be smooth. Third, low advocacy. Few people will expend social or political capital to defend your position. You are respected, perhaps liked, but not defended. When these conditions exist, the system does not need to decide to remove you. It only needs to recognize that it could. That recognition is downgrading. This is where many men make a critical error. They believe being easy to work with, emotionally stable, and cooperative increases security. In early stages of life, it often does. In complex systems, it can do the opposite. Ease without leverage reduces perceived cost. This does not mean instability is rewarded. It means scarcity of consequence is punished. Psychologically, replaceable individuals are those whose presence does not alter outcomes. They contribute, but they do not anchor. They participate, but they do not constrain options. Their value is additive, not structural, and systems protect structure, not addition. This is why titles, tenure, and reputation can coexist with replaceability. You can be respected and still be downgraded. You can be praised and still be prepared for removal. Praise is emotional currency. Replaceability is structural accounting. Understanding this reframes the title you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you as a warning, not a condemnation. The markers that follow are not about becoming ruthless or manipulative. They are about recognizing which behaviors quietly signal low consequence. For example, someone who consistently absorbs extra responsibility without renegotiation appears valuable, but also easily exploited. Someone who adapts instantly to every change appears resilient, but also non-essential. Someone who is always available appears committed, but also non-scarce. None of these behaviors are wrong, but when they cluster together, they create a psychological profile: useful, reliable, low friction, and therefore replaceable. This is why replaceability often surprises people who believe they have done everything right. They mistake moral correctness for structural security. Systems do not reward morality, they reward necessity, and necessity is behavioral. Replaceability, then, is not something you are. It is something you are read as. It emerges from patterns over time. Patterns the system tracks more carefully than words, promises, or intentions. In the sections that follow, we will examine the exact behaviors that produce this reading. Not in abstract terms, but as observable markers, signals that repeatedly precede downgrading across environments. Because once you understand what replaceable actually means psychologically, you stop asking why replacement feels sudden. You realize it was simply delayed. And with that clarity, you are finally able to see the markers before the downgrade becomes irreversible. The first behavioral marker used to downgrade you is deceptively simple: over-explaining yourself. Most people believe explanation is a sign of clarity, honesty, or professionalism. Psychologically, systems often read it very differently. Excess explanation signals that you feel the need to justify your position, and the moment you justify, you imply that your position is negotiable. This is a critical mechanism behind you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. Over-explanation does not make you safer. It often makes you easier to demote. High-consequence individuals rarely explain themselves at length. This is not because they are arrogant, but because their position already carries weight. Their actions speak within a context of assumed legitimacy. When they act, the system adjusts around them. When low-consequence individuals act, they feel compelled to narrate, clarify, defend, and preempt misunderstanding. That difference is not subtle. Systems notice it immediately. Over-explanation broadcasts 3 psychological signals at once. First, it signals uncertainty. You are unsure whether your action will be accepted, so you attempt to control interpretation in advance. Second, it signals permission-seeking. By explaining, you are implicitly asking for validation that your reasoning is acceptable. Third, it signals low leverage. If your presence carried sufficient consequence, explanation would be unnecessary. None of this requires malicious interpretation. It is simply pattern recognition. Consider how leaders communicate versus those being evaluated. Leaders make concise statements. They state outcomes, not internal reasoning. They allow ambiguity. Those under review, by contrast, provide context, background, intention, and emotional framing. They try to be understood. Leaders expect to be. This asymmetry is one of the earliest ways replaceability is detected. Over time, systems learn who needs to be reassured and who does not. The more you explain, the more you train the system to view you as someone who can be questioned, redirected, or overridden without resistance. You become responsive rather than structural. This does not mean silence is always power. What matters is necessity. When explanation becomes habitual, especially under pressure, it suggests that your actions do not automatically command trust or consequence. In the context of downgrading, over-explanation serves a practical function for the system. It provides information, and information reduces uncertainty. When you make yourself fully legible, you make yourself easier to replace. Your role becomes transparent. Your reasoning becomes replicable. Your value becomes portable. This is why over-explanation often precedes sidelining. The system no longer needs to infer how you operate. It has already mapped you. Many men fall into this marker because they equate clarity with respect. They believe that if they just explain themselves well enough, misunderstandings will disappear. But systems do not downgrade people because they misunderstand them. They downgrade people because they understand them too well. This is the quiet irony. The more you explain, the less irreplaceable you become. Recognizing this marker does not mean becoming evasive or uncooperative. It means observing when explanation shifts from communication to justification. That shift is subtle, but once it becomes a pattern, it lowers your rank. And ranking, as we've established, is how replacement begins. The second behavioral marker used to downgrade you is constant accessibility. Being always reachable, always responsive, always available may feel like commitment. Psychologically, systems often read it as low scarcity, and low scarcity reduces perceived value. This marker sits at the core of you are replaceable, 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you because it operates quietly. No one criticizes you for being available. In fact, you may be praised for it. But behind that praise, a different calculation is taking place. Accessibility answers a single question for the system: how much does this person's absence matter? If you are always present, the answer becomes not much. Scarcity is one of the primary signals of consequence. When someone's time, attention, or emotional bandwidth is limited, systems are forced to prioritize it. When it is unlimited, systems adapt to it. Adaptation reduces urgency, and reduced urgency lowers rank. This is why highly protected individuals are often difficult to reach. Not because they are disengaged, but because their presence is structured, not automatic. Their availability must be negotiated. That negotiation itself signals value. By contrast, constant accessibility creates a psychological pattern. You respond immediately, absorb disruptions, and rearrange yourself around the system's needs. This makes you reliable, but also interchangeable. If your presence requires no adjustment, your absence requires little either. This dynamic becomes especially clear during moments of stress or transition. Systems quietly test who will stretch without complaint. Those who do are marked as flexible. Flexibility feels positive, but in ranking systems, it often translates to non-essential. This is not about refusing responsibility. It is about how predictable accommodation erodes perceived leverage. Emotional accessibility amplifies this effect. When you are always available to support, reassure, or stabilize others, you become a resource rather than a pillar. Resources are consumed. Pillars are protected. The difference is not how much you give, but whether your absence would destabilize the structure. Many men believe emotional availability builds loyalty. In reality, loyalty forms around scarcity and consequence. When emotional support is constant and unconditional, it becomes expected. Expectations remove appreciation, and what is expected can be replaced. This is one reason downgrading often happens without conflict. The system does not feel it is losing anything rare. You have trained it not to. Again, this does not mean becoming distant or withholding by design. It means recognizing when accessibility stops being chosen and starts being assumed. The moment your availability is taken for granted, your replaceability increases. This marker is particularly dangerous because it masquerades as virtue. It feels cooperative, mature, and selfless, but systems do not rank virtue. They rank consequence. The third behavioral marker used to downgrade you is predictability. Not reliability, not consistency, but emotional and behavioral predictability under pressure. When systems can accurately anticipate how you will react, they can plan around you. And what can be planned around can be replaced. This marker is central to you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you because it removes uncertainty. Uncertainty is often the only leverage individuals possess in large systems. Once that uncertainty disappears, so does protection. Predictability signals low risk. Low risk sounds positive, but in ranking systems, it has a darker implication. Low risk equals low consequence. If the system knows you will comply, adapt, explain, or absorb change without escalation, it feels safe removing you. This does not require negative behavior on your part. In fact, predictability often comes from emotional discipline. You stay calm. You do not overreact. You do not challenge authority impulsively. These traits are healthy, but when they become fully predictable, they remove friction. Friction is costly. Cost creates hesitation. Hesitation creates protection. Highly protected individuals are not chaotic, but they are not fully legible either. Their reactions are measured, but not transparent. The system cannot reliably predict whether their removal would trigger disruption, resistance, or reputational cost. That uncertainty acts as a deterrent. Predictable individuals, by contrast, respond the same way every time. They process internally, adapt externally, and move on. Systems learn this pattern quickly. They learn that change will be absorbed without incident. And once that lesson is learned, downgrading accelerates. This is why many people are shocked by replacement despite a history of handling things well. They believe their emotional control should have earned security. Instead, it taught the system that their removal would be smooth. Predictability also simplifies replacement logistics. If the system knows how you respond to pressure, it knows how your replacement will be received. There will be no outburst, no disruption, no escalation, just adjustment. This is not a flaw in character. It is a mismatch between personal virtue and systemic logic. Predictability becomes especially dangerous when combined with over-explanation and constant accessibility. Together, they create a fully mapped profile: responsive, calm, reliable, low resistance. In other words, safe to downgrade. This does not mean cultivating volatility. It means understanding that total legibility reduces leverage. Systems protect what they cannot fully anticipate. Recognizing this marker allows you to distinguish between emotional maturity and behavioral exposure. Emotional maturity regulates your reactions. Behavioral exposure teaches the system exactly how to manage you. The fourth behavioral marker used to downgrade you is seeking validation from the very system that ranks you. This marker is subtle, socially rewarded, and deeply misunderstood. It feels responsible. It feels communicative. Psychologically, it signals dependence, and dependence lowers leverage. In the context of you are replaceable, 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. Approval seeking is not about insecurity in the emotional sense. It is about structural positioning. When you look to the system for reassurance, you reveal where authority sits, and it is not with you. Systems protect those who self-regulate. They downgrade those who require confirmation. Approval seeking appears in small ways: asking whether a decision was okay, checking if expectations were met, requesting clarity that was not strictly necessary, seeking reassurance after change. None of these actions are wrong in isolation. The danger is pattern. Patterns tell systems how to relate to you. When reassurance is repeatedly requested, the system learns that your internal stability depends on external validation. That dependency becomes a liability. If your confidence requires maintenance, the system must manage you. Managed elements are replaceable elements. This is why highly protected individuals rarely ask if they are doing well. Their work speaks within an assumed frame of competence. Silence from the system does not destabilize them. They do not need emotional confirmation to continue functioning. By contrast, approval seeking teaches the system that withdrawal of feedback will create discomfort, but not resistance. And discomfort without resistance is easy to ignore. This creates a quiet imbalance. The system becomes the source of emotional regulation. You become the seeker. Once that dynamic is established, downgrading becomes safer. Removing someone who depends on you feels risky. Removing someone who depends on you feels manageable. Approval seeking also reduces perceived authority. Authority is inferred from certainty under ambiguity. When you ask for confirmation, you imply uncertainty about your own judgment. Over time, this trains the system to override rather than consult you. The irony is that many people seek validation to strengthen relationships. Psychologically, it often weakens them. It moves you from peer to subordinate, from contributor to dependent. And systems rarely protect dependence when optimizing. This marker often intensifies during periods of instability, restructuring, leadership change, shifting priorities. Those moments feel dangerous, so people reach for reassurance. But those moments are exactly when ranking decisions are made. Seeking validation during uncertainty flags you as someone who will adapt emotionally rather than assert structurally. Again, this is not about becoming detached or indifferent. It is about recognizing when reassurance becomes a substitute for leverage. When validation is required to proceed, your autonomy is compromised. And compromised autonomy is one of the clearest signals of replaceability. The fifth behavioral marker used to downgrade you is confusing loyalty with irreplaceability. Loyalty feels like protection. Psychologically, it often functions as exposure. This marker sits at the emotional core of you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you because loyalty is one of the most common reasons men are blindsided by replacement. They believe time served, sacrifices made, and consistency shown have secured their position. Systems do not read loyalty that way. Loyalty is an emotional currency. Irreplaceability is a structural condition. When the two are mistaken for each other, downgrading becomes almost inevitable. Systems expect loyalty from those who stay. The longer you remain, the more loyalty becomes assumed rather than rewarded. What is assumed stops being protected. It becomes baseline, and baseline can be swapped. This is why loyal individuals are often shocked when they are sidelined. They mistake endurance for leverage. But endurance does not constrain the system's options. Leverage does. Loyalty without leverage sends a clear behavioral signal. This person will remain even when conditions worsen. That signal reduces risk, and reduced risk lowers the cost of replacement. Paradoxically, the more loyal you appear without demonstrating consequence, the safer it feels to remove you. The system anticipates minimal retaliation, minimal reputational fallout, minimal disruption. Loyalty becomes predictability in emotional form. This is not a betrayal of values by the system. It is a logical outcome of optimization. Loyalty also discourages boundary enforcement. Loyal individuals hesitate to renegotiate terms, assert scarcity, or withdraw participation. They do not want to appear uncommitted. Over time, this teaches the system that they can be relied upon without reciprocal investment. Reciprocity fades. Protection fades with it. This is why some individuals who contribute less are retained, while highly loyal contributors are replaced. Contribution adds value. Leverage adds consequence. Systems prioritize consequence. Loyalty becomes dangerous when it replaces negotiation. When loyalty silences recalibration, you stop updating your position while the system continues updating its ranking of you. In this context, loyalty is not punished, it is priced in. Once priced in, it no longer differentiates you. This is a painful realization because loyalty is often taught as the ultimate safeguard. In reality, it is only protective when paired with scarcity and consequence. Without those, loyalty accelerates downgrading by signaling compliance without cost. Understanding this marker reframes loyalty from a shield into a signal. It does not make you untouchable. It tells the system how easily you can be touched. The sixth behavioral marker used to downgrade you is public moral signaling, the visible, repeated demonstration of how principled, fair, or ethically aligned you are. While morality is personally stabilizing, public signaling of it often reduces strategic ambiguity. And reduced ambiguity lowers protection. Within you are replaceable, 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. This marker explains why some of the most principled individuals are quietly sidelined. Not because morality is punished, but because predictable morality is manageable. Systems do not oppose ethics. They simply do not anchor themselves to them. When your moral stance is consistently visible and externally affirmed, the system learns exactly where you stand, and, more importantly, where you will not stand. That clarity constrains you. And constraint makes replacement easier. Public moral signaling sends 3 signals. First, predictability of stance. The system knows how you will respond in ethically ambiguous situations. Second, limited flexibility. You are less likely to adapt quietly when values are challenged. Third, low appetite for strategic compromise. That reduces your usefulness in moments where the system prioritizes continuity over ideals. This does not mean immoral people are protected. It means morally legible people are easier to route around. When systems anticipate friction, they reduce exposure. They do not confront values head-on, they minimize interaction. Over time, this becomes downgrading. You are still respected, still praised, still included, but not relied upon when stakes are high. This is why visibly good individuals are often excluded from critical decisions, not because they are wrong, but because their presence introduces constraint. Constraint introduces cost, and cost increases hesitation. Systems prefer low-hesitation actors. Moral signaling also attracts symbolic roles. You become the conscience, the stabilizer, the culture carrier. These roles feel important but are rarely protected. They are ceremonial, not structural, and ceremonial roles are the first to be trimmed. The danger intensifies when moral signaling replaces leverage. When values become your primary identity, you may stop cultivating scarcity, negotiation power, or strategic flexibility. The system learns that your contributions are principled but non-essential. Again, this is not an argument against morality. It is an argument against mistaking moral visibility for protection. Protected individuals are often morally grounded but strategically opaque. Their values are expressed through outcomes, not declarations. The system cannot easily predict how far they will go or what removing them would cost. Public moral signaling removes that uncertainty. When your stance is fully visible, your boundaries are mapped, and once mapped, you can be bypassed. The seventh behavioral marker used to downgrade you is the inability to withdraw. Not quitting, not abandoning responsibility, but the visible inability to pause, step back, or create absence without fear. Systems read constant presence as attachment. Attachment lowers leverage. Within you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. This marker explains why those who stay through everything are often the least protected. When withdrawal is never exercised, it stops being an option. And when it stops being an option, the system no longer has to account for it. Withdrawal is one of the few non-verbal ways individuals test their value. When someone can step back without explanation, it forces the system to confront the cost of their absence. When someone cannot, the system never has to ask that question. This is not about manipulation. It is about structural awareness. Systems quickly learn who will remain regardless of conditions. Those individuals are emotionally invested, identity-bound, or dependent on the system. Their continued presence is predictable. Predictability reduces risk. Reduced risk lowers protection. This is why people who never threaten to leave are often surprised when they are removed. They believe endurance signals importance. Psychologically, endurance without scarcity signals replaceability. The inability to withdraw also signals fear of loss. Fear of loss communicates low bargaining power. When systems sense that you need them more than they need you, downgrading becomes safe. This marker often appears in subtle behaviors. Reluctance to take time off, discomfort with disengagement, immediate re-entry after conflict, or apologizing for absence. These actions communicate that presence must be maintained to preserve relevance. But relevance that requires constant presence is fragile. Protected individuals are not constantly present. Their presence is conditional. It appears where it matters and disappears where it does not. That absence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces valuation. When withdrawal is impossible for you, the system knows it will never have to compete for your participation. And what does not require competition does not require protection. This is why systems often initiate removal rather than wait for disengagement. If you will never leave, the only way to reduce dependency is to replace you. Downgrading becomes a preemptive move. Again, this is not about threatening exit. It is about whether exit exists as a credible option. Systems sense credibility without being told. The inability to withdraw is one of the clearest signals of low leverage. It tells the system that your relationship is fixed, regardless of how it treats you. The 8th and final behavioral marker used to downgrade you is stability without visible growth signals. Reliability, consistency, and steadiness are often praised, but when they are not paired with clear indicators of expansion, they quietly signal stagnation. and systems are far more threatened by stagnation than by volatility. This marker completes the psychological picture. Behind you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. When all previous signals are present: predictability, availability, loyalty without leverage. Stability becomes the final confirmation that replacement will be safe. Stability answers a critical question for the system. Will this person change on their own? If the answer appears to be no, the system begins preparing alternatives. This does not mean growth must be loud or performative. It means that absence of growth signals is interpreted as plateau. And plateaus are managed. Systems operate on future orientation. They are not concerned with how stable you have been. They are concerned with how adaptable you will be. When someone appears comfortable, settled, and unchanged over time, the system infers that adaptation will require pressure or replacement. This is why stable performers are often shocked when they are sidelined. They have done nothing wrong. They have delivered consistently. But consistency without expansion signals that the system must act if change is needed. Growth signals function as deterrents. They tell the system that your role is evolving, that replacing you would require catching up, not just swapping out. Without those signals, your role appears static, and static roles are the easiest to fill. This marker is especially dangerous because it is passive. You do not choose stagnation. You simply remain effective within your current scope. Over time, effectiveness becomes expected. Expectation erodes differentiation. When your value becomes predictable and bounded, the system can plan around it. Planning reduces risk. Reduced risk accelerates downgrading. Stability also reinforces prior markers. A stable individual who never withdraws, never renegotiates, never creates scarcity, and never signals growth presents a complete profile: dependable, manageable, low consequence. At that point, replacement is not personal, it is procedural. Understanding this final marker reframes stability as something that must be accompanied by visible evolution. Not ambition, not self-promotion, but undeniable indicators that your presence is changing the system, not merely maintaining it. With all 8 behavioral markers now examined, the pattern becomes clear. Replaceability is not sudden, it is cumulative. Replacement begins quietly, but it can be recognized just as quietly if you know what to look for. Downgrading does not announce itself, but it does leave traces. The purpose of this section is not to create suspicion, but to restore perception. If you are replaceable, 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you has established anything so far, it is that replacement is a process. And processes can be observed while they are still unfolding. The first sign of downgrading is access compression. You are no longer consulted at the same stage of decisions. Information arrives later, thinner, or already finalized. Nothing confrontational occurs. You are still included, but only after influence has passed. This is not accidental. It is a test of consequence. The system is measuring whether your reduced access creates friction. If it doesn't, the downgrade continues. The second signal is tone neutralization. Communication becomes flatter. Less warmth, less curiosity, less emotional investment. This is not hostility, it is disengagement. Systems withdraw effect before they withdraw position. Emotional distance reduces guilt. Reduced guilt lowers the psychological cost of removal. The third signal is role narrowing. Your scope quietly tightens. You are trusted with execution, not direction. Tasks replace discussions. Responsibility remains, but authority thins. This is one of the clearest indicators that behavioral markers have already been registered and the system is limiting exposure. Another critical sign is absence of recalibration. When conditions change, protected individuals renegotiate. Downgraded individuals are informed. If changes are happening around you rather than with you, the system has already adjusted its expectations of your relevance. You may also notice silence after contribution. Ideas are acknowledged but not built upon. Input is received but not integrated. This is a subtle but decisive shift. Contribution without integration means you are no longer shaping outcomes, only feeding them. Most people misread these signs because none of them feel aggressive. There is no conflict to react to, no accusation to defend against. That is by design. Downgrading is meant to feel normal so it can proceed without resistance. The most dangerous mistake at this stage is overcorrection. Explaining more, becoming more available, demonstrating loyalty louder. These reactions activate the very markers that caused downgrading in the first place. They confirm low leverage rather than restore consequence. Defense begins with restraint, not escalation. Recognition also requires emotional discipline. Downgrading triggers anxiety because it threatens identity. Many men rush to repair that anxiety by seeking reassurance or clarity. But clarity is rarely offered during downgrading. The system has no incentive to explain a process that benefits from silence. This is why awareness matters. Once you can name the pattern, you start personalizing it. You start searching for hidden mistakes. You start observing structure, and structure reveals timing. Downgrading moves in phases. First, access reduces. Then influence fades. Then replacement becomes feasible. If you can identify the first phase, you regain optionality. You may not be able to reverse the system's logic, but you can stop accelerating it. This is the core defensive value of understanding behavioral markers used to downgrade you. It shifts your focus from emotional reaction to situational awareness. You are no longer asking, "What did I do wrong?" You are asking, "What is changing around me?" That shift restores agency. Awareness does not guarantee protection, but ignorance guarantees surprise. Non-replaceable people are rarely louder, more moral, or more agreeable than others. What distinguishes them is not intensity of effort, but structural positioning. They behave in ways that make downgrading costly, not through manipulation, but through consequence. This section exists to sharpen the contrast. Behind you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. If replacement is triggered by low consequence, then non-replaceability is defined by its opposite. Removal would create disruption the system does not want to manage. The first difference is selective engagement. Non-replaceable individuals do not participate everywhere. Their involvement is intentional and bounded. This creates scarcity of contribution. When their input appears, it carries weight precisely because it is not constant. Systems are forced to notice when they are present and when they are not. Second, they maintain a symmetry of investment. They contribute meaningfully, but they do not over-identify with the system. Their sense of stability does not depend on continuous validation. This emotional independence signals that withdrawal is possible, even if never exercised. Possibility alone alters ranking. Third, non-replaceable individuals tolerate ambiguity without explanation. Silence does not trigger over-communication. Uncertainty does not provoke reassurance seeking. This communicates internal authority. Systems infer that such individuals are anchored elsewhere, not fully contained by the environment. Another critical difference is boundary clarity. Non-replaceable people renegotiate scope naturally when conditions change. They do not accept silent expansion of responsibility or erosion of authority. This recalibration forces the system to account for their presence. Accounting creates cost. Cost creates protection. They also differ in how they signal growth. Growth is not announced, but it is visible. Their role expands, their perspective evolves, and their impact changes shape. This makes replacement difficult because substitution would require catching up, not just filling in. Importantly, non-replaceable individuals do not rely on moral signaling for leverage. Their values are implicit, not performative. The system cannot easily predict where compromise ends. That ambiguity creates caution. Perhaps most importantly, non-replaceable people are not optimized for convenience. They are reliable, but not frictionless. Their presence introduces complexity the system must work around. That complexity becomes insurance. This does not mean they are difficult or hostile. It means they are consequential. Their reactions, availability, and participation cannot be fully anticipated. And unpredictability, when paired with competence, creates gravity. The contrast reveals the quiet truth behind replaceability. People are not removed because they are weak. They are removed because they are easy. Non-replaceable individuals are not easy. Understanding this difference is not about imitation. It is about calibration. Once you see how non-replaceable people are treated, you can recognize when you are being positioned as expendable. And that recognition is the final form of defense. Once you understand that, you stop waiting to be told. Replacement is never a moment. It is never a sentence spoken out loud. It is never the meeting you replay in your head afterward, wondering where things went wrong. Replacement is a recognition that happens silently, long before any visible action follows. This is the final truth behind you are replaceable. 8 behavioral markers used to downgrade you. By the time removal occurs, the decision has already been made emotionally, structurally, and psychologically. What remains is timing, and timing is chosen for the system's convenience, not your clarity. This is why so many people describe replacement as sudden. It feels abrupt only because the signals were never framed as warnings. They were framed as normal, reduced access, neutral tone, narrowed roles, silence where feedback once existed. Each change felt small. Together, they formed a verdict. The mistake most people make is waiting for explanation. They assume that if something is wrong, it will be communicated. But systems do not explain downgrading because explanation creates resistance. Silence creates compliance. This is not cruelty, it is efficiency. Throughout this documentary, we have examined 8 behavioral markers that quietly lower perceived consequence. Over-explaining, constant accessibility, predictability, approval-seeking, loyalty without leverage, public moral signaling, inability to withdraw, and stability without growth signals. None of these behaviors are immoral, many are encouraged. That is precisely why they are dangerous. They feel safe, they feel cooperative, they feel mature. But systems do not reward feeling, they respond to structure. Replaceability emerges when your behavior tells the system 3 things at once. You are easy to understand, easy to predict, and easy to absorb without disruption. When those signals accumulate, downgrading becomes rational, even inevitable. The most unsettling realization is this: no one has to dislike you to replace you. Respect, appreciation, and even gratitude can coexist with removal. Replacement is not personal, it is logistical. Once this is understood, the question changes. It is no longer, "Why did this happen to me?" It becomes, "What did my behavior communicate over time?" That question restores agency. This documentary is not an argument for manipulation, withdrawal, or hostility. It is an argument for awareness. Awareness of how systems interpret behavior. Awareness of how silence operates. Awareness of how ranking replaces judgment. When you lack this awareness, you misinterpret calm as safety and inclusion as protection. You wait for signals that never arrive. And when replacement finally happens, it feels like betrayal, because you never saw the downgrade. But when you understand that replacement is detected long before it is announced, surprise disappears. You begin to notice when access changes, when influence thins, when your presence stops shaping outcomes and starts merely filling space. You stop reacting emotionally and start observing structurally. That shift is the real defense. Not everyone can prevent replacement. Systems evolve, priorities change, but no one needs to be blindsided by it. And no one needs to unknowingly accelerate it through behavior they believe is protecting them. The most dangerous position is not being replaceable. It is being replaceable without knowing it. If there is one lesson to carry forward, it is this: pay attention to what your behavior teaches the system about the cost of losing you, because systems are always listening, even when they say nothing. And silence, as you now understand, is rarely neutral.